Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be an April ARCs reading vlog. I know I have already done one this month, but I had a lot of April ARCs to go through. So I have 3 really anticipated releases that I'm very excited to read in this reading vlog. These books all come out towards the latter half of April. I'm super excited to dive into these. I'm going to quickly introduce the titles I will be reading in this vlog, and then we will get to reading. So the first book in this vlog is I sound like a broken record, I know, because I've read some of my most anticipated releases of the year in these vlogs, but one of my most anticipated of the year is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. This comes out April 22nd, and Nestlings was one of my favorite books of last year. I have loved every single thing that I've read from Nat Cassidy, and I'm so excited to dive into this werewolf book. So that's going to be the first thing we read. We also have The Rotting Room by Viggy, Parr, Hampton. This comes out April 23rd, and this is going to be like a religious sort of horror, which I'm super excited about. And then we also have Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones coming out April 28th. Now this title may be familiar to you. It was to me. This is actually a book that has been published before, but it's getting a re-release, which is so exciting. I love the fact that Stephen Graham Jones's older works, a lot of which are out of print or very hard to find, are getting republished so that more people can check out their work. I believe this is a haunted house novella, so super excited to read all 3 of these, but we are going to be starting out with When the Wolf Comes Home. I am so excited to dive into this one. We have Nat Cassidy exploring werewolves, but also I have heard this deals with a father and a child relationship, and it also seems like we have a woman and a child on the run from something big and bad and dangerous. So I'm so excited to read it. I'm gonna go get to reading, and I will check back in later with the reading update. So I am now about 50% of the way through When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I am enjoying it. Just a quick, fun little reading update. I now have an iPad, so I can now read e-arcs on this instead of my phone. Reading on my phone has never bothered me. I read not only NetGalley e-arcs, but also books from Libby and Hoopla on my phone as well. It's just never been something that I felt like I needed to buy a dedicated e-reader for, because my phone worked just fine. But I got the opportunity to have an iPad. My partner had an iPad, and then his schooling, he had to get a specific version of an iPad, so he doesn't need 2. And he was like, why don't you just use the iPad to read on? Because I didn't need an iPad for anything else. So yeah, we're switching over to an iPad to read digital books now, and I just think that's so exciting. I think I don't know if it's going to be a game changer, quite honestly, because I still am going to use my phone to read digital books. That's actually one of my hacks for how I read so much. When people ask me, is that I do usually have a ebook on my phone, so wherever I am, if I'm in a long line at a store or even just out and about doing things, I have a book on me at all times. So it's not going to replace my phone. I still will be utilizing that here and there for reading, but this is really nice. So really exciting stuff. But back to the book update. I'm 50% of the way through When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy, and if you're going to pick this one up, don't read a detailed synopsis or a review. That sounds counterproductive, but there is an element in this book that I did not know was going to be an element, and when I got to it very early on, I was really pleasantly surprised. So when you're picking this one up, up, know that you are following main character Jess. She is a struggling actor, and one night when she's at her house, she finds a little boy who needs her help, and he's running away from his father, who is a little bit monstrous. So Jess grabs this boy and they're on the run. They are fleeing this boy's father. And as you can imagine from the title, this boy's father has some very monstrous qualities about him. So I'm really enjoying this one. This is not at all like what I expected. This is kind of a book where I had an idea of what I was going to get into. I've read a lot of Nat Cassidy, so I'm familiar with his prose and just his writing style, and then also with the cover and the title and synopsis, I knew it was going to be dabbling into werewolf territory. But the way this story is going is so unexpected and surprising. I'm really liking it. This feels like this is a woman and child on the run sort of story. It feels a little bit like Firestarter almost by Stephen King, where we have that setup where we have people on the run and it's like a cat and mouse sort of escape story. It is very high stakes and it is very speedy. From the jump, we have a very fast-paced story. It hasn't been even 48 hours when we've gotten to the 50% mark of this book, so it's a fast-driven plot. It's very action-packed and there's a lot of body horror in here, but it's also very funny. I was not expecting that, and that's like a really pleasant surprise. Jess as a main character, just her internal monologue, very funny, and I don't think that I was expecting that, but I am really enjoying it. I love Jess's point of view inside her head, her thought processes. She's a very funny main character, and I did see that Helen Laser is narrating this audiobook, and she is the audiobook narrator for Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, which is a book that I read on audio, and I loved what the audiobook had to contribute to the satirical tone of it. So I think this one's gonna be really great in audiobook, just really letting Jess as a character shine. But this is one where it gets very explicitly paranormal, and it's paranormal horror where you kind of have to acknowledge the fact that it's not like a realistic horror so much. There are definitely realistic elements to it, but there's also this paranormal element that you have to suspend your disbelief. And when I encountered it, I was like, oh, this is where we're going. This is fascinating. And I kind of adjusted my expectations for this one. And I think the success on whether you like this one or not is going to be whether or not you get along with that, the elements that I don't want to give away, but that you want to suspend your disbelief, which I totally can. I love a paranormal horror, and the horror elements of this story are really like transforming the way a woman on the run sort of horror or thriller goes for me, because it's just invigorating it and making some of the stops and pit stops a whole lot more high stakes, and I'm really enjoying it. I like that this one has some trigger warnings at the beginning of this book, because I think there are some very specific triggers in here. I'll just say that I think Nat Cassidy has like a agenda to make us all scared of public bathrooms a little bit. Rest Stop obviously had to deal with an isolated rest stop and a bathroom in a rest stop, and there's a bathroom scene in chapter 2 or 3 of this book that I've never thought about the thing that happens there, and now it's like, it's a fear. It's a fear of mine. So that's been unlocked. If anything related to needles and blood-borne illnesses like that, that's a big one, especially right at the jump. And then of course we have some body horror elements, as you might guess by the werewolf or the wolf on the cover of this book. So I'm really enjoying it. Was not expecting it to be so funny, but I like the narration style. I like the twists and turns and the plot progression of this one. This one is definitely more fast-paced. If you've read Mary or if you've read Nestlings, this one feels a lot speedier. I do believe it's also quite a bit shorter than those other books as well, but if you liked those and you kind of wanted something a little bit more fast-paced, or you're more of a fast-paced reader, I think you could really like this one. So I'm so curious to see where this one goes. I've heard people say that this is also very heartbreaking, so I'm interested to see like where the comedy and the horror and the heartbreak all come into play in the next 50% of this book. So I'm gonna go finish this one up. I will check back in with my review. So I have now finished When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy, and I loved this one. I had already thought this about Nat Cassidy, but this book definitely cements him as one of my auto-read horror authors. I just really enjoyed this one. I mentioned in my last update that this was very unexpectedly funny, and Jess was a really fun main character to be inside her mind a little bit, and it definitely struck that balance between some scary scenes, some gory scenes, some humor. Jess has a very fun internal monologue, and then also the ending was very emotional. The ending was very impactful. It wrapped up this story really beautifully, and the afterword by Nat Cassidy also was just a lovely thing to read. Honestly, I would love to read some horror nonfiction by Nat Cassidy in the future. I know he said in this afterword that he was not going to have an afterword in every single book that he writes, but every single afterword that I've read, I've really enjoyed getting to kind of see some of his processes and reasonings for writing the books that he's writing, and then just also getting some insight into horror fiction and some of the tropes and themes. I really like those afterwards, so make sure that you read that after you finish reading this one. I would highly recommend this if you're looking for a werewolf tale, if you are looking for a paranormal speculative tale that is creepy but also very emotionally and heartfelt. And of course, if you've liked Nat Cassidy's other books, this one definitely is just as wonderful as the other things that I have read by him. Now, I think this one, if you have like a difficult relationship with your father, or if your father is no longer here, tread lightly going into this one, because I could see that this would potentially be a very triggering book, because it does deal very heavily with themes of fatherhoods and absent fathers and just complex fatherhood dynamics and relationships. And if that's something that is very personal to you, you may have a tough time reading this one, but I think it could also be very cathartic. So just keep that in mind. There are trigger warnings at the beginning of this one, giving a detailed list of all of the things that you'll encounter in this book, which really dig in horror. So one thing that I absolutely loved about this book was the conversations about being scared and fear and overcoming that fear and doing things even if you're scared. I really liked that exploration. Jess was a great main character, and this feels like a speedier, more action-packed book than Nestlings or Mary, but I think this one did a great job of balancing that action and that character development. So this book comes out April 22nd if you are interested in a really great addition to werewolf fiction. And also, I'll just say it, I don't think their writing styles are similar at all, but I think Nat Cassidy does what I love about Stephen King, is blending horror with just everyday life and creating these complex characters and relationship dynamics, and really showcasing the beauty of horror in that it is a genre that scares, and it's a genre that helps us confront our fears, but it is a genre that can be very beautiful and cathartic and just really excellently done. So I definitely think that if you like Stephen King books, their prose is not similar, but if you like Stephen King's exploration of everyday horrors and difficult situations that we encounter in the real world, but kind of play it up with a paranormal sort of spin, I think you could like Nat Cassidy's book. So make sure to check this out when it comes out. I actually already have a copy coming to me in my Nightworms package for May, so super excited to have a physical copy of this one on my shelves. We're now moving on to the next book in this vlog, and that would be The Rotting Room by Viggy Parr Hampton. I'm gonna go get to reading, and I will check back in later with a reading update. So I am now about 40% of the way through The Rotting Room by Viggy Parr Hampton, and this one is a shorter book. It is about 290 pages, so I was going back and forth on whether or not to do a 50% and then a completion update, just because this is reading very fast and it's very short, and the synopsis for this one does go into some things that haven't started coming into play just yet. So initial thoughts on this book: we are following main character Sister Rafaela, and at the beginning of this book she has just joined a new order called the Sisters of Divine Innocence, and this is a convent that has some very unique traditions, in particular having to deal with the way that they celebrate their dead and the way that they take care of their dead, and a lot of that has to deal with the titular rotting room. So Sister Rafaela is thrown into this new situation, and she is a little bit taken aback by some of these strange rituals. However, she's just come from a convent that was descended into madness a little bit. There's a really dark backstory there that has been haunting her and is really impacting the way that she feels about this new convent. So as things start happening at this new convent, she's worried that maybe her personal baggage might be influencing what is going on at her current convent, and she's worried that maybe she is blowing things out of perspective. So things are going to continue to get darker and more sinister, and something is not quite right at this convent, but our main character is worried that maybe she's overreacting. I do like the setup of this one. I like a good religious horror, and I think that this convent really creates a sense of isolation in our main character that really ups the ante and the creep factor, because not only do we have this very interesting practice of this rotting room, which is a little bit creepy and unnerving. It's not a practice that other convents do. We have that. We also have, obviously, the convent itself is set away from the rest of the town, so we have isolation there. Rafaela is a newcomer, and also this is a convent where the sisters only get 1 hour a day to speak. Other than that, they have a vow of silence, which really adds to the isolation that Rafaela is feeling. Now, while I do like that, and I think that's going to add to her isolation and paranoia, it does make things a little bit tricky just in terms of a reading experience and keeping it engaging, because we don't have a lot of dialogue. A lot of this book is Rafaela just kind of narrating her day and what she is doing and her internal monologue, and we don't get a lot of it broken up with dialogue because of this vow of silence. So that is making the reading experience a little bit hard at times. It can feel a lot of times just like a lot of characters monologuing and info dumping, because there's not like dialogue or conversations to add in some plot elements. You only have the inside of Rafaela's mind and her explorations, and then also there is another point of view in here, Father Bruno, and I don't know how I'm feeling about him as a point of view. I tend to like in shorter books not that many point of views. It's a storytelling device that I don't mind, but I find just works better for me in a larger novel as opposed to something that is not quite 300 pages. And just Father Bruno as a character, just whenever we go to his point of view, it takes me out of the momentum of Rafaela's story, and hers is more engaging at the moment. I know the ways in which they are going to intersect, and maybe he's probably going to help her out of this situation, but right now I'm just not liking those chapters as much as Rafaela's chapters. So I have 60% more of the book to go. Something has just happened that is really going to up the ante and the creep factor for this one, so I'm gonna go get to reading, and I will check back in later when I've finished. So I finished finished The Rotting Room by Viggy Parr Hampton, and overall I thought this was a pretty decent historical religious horror. There were some things, of course, that I didn't exactly love, but I did think the ending of this one was sufficiently bleak and, without giving too much away, was a really ambitious ending and not like a stereotypical or a weak ending. I thought that this book really nailed the landing. The premise and the isolated setting really worked well for me. The titular Rotting Room was such an interesting, historically accurate piece of information that really led this book and had some of the creepiest moments in this book. So I do like what this book did with that concept. I thought that concept was really interesting, taking something that actually has been done in the past and twisting it into more of a nefarious plot device. But the things that I didn't love about this one continued to be a problem for me in the latter 50% of this novel. I still feel like this book would have been stronger without Father Bruno's point of view. And then, while I did appreciate what the Vows of Silence did to make Sister Rafaela feel very alone and by herself, it was really hard to establish dialogue and feel like the story was propelling forward when we're so inside her head. We watch her complete daily chores around this convent, and a lot of what is going on, it is her inside her head going over things that have happened to her in the past, as well as trying to figure out this mystery on her own. So just because it was so internal, I felt like that really detracted from the momentum of the story at times, because she didn't have any co-conspirators or anyone who she could talk with and have dialogue to move things forward in that way. But I do think this is a pretty decent horror novel if you like religious horror and you're looking to read a religious horror about a group of nuns. I think that this is a short enough read and a quick enough read that you might enjoy it more than I did. I did not enjoy it. Just the things that I didn't love kind of detracted from my reading experience, but I would recommend this to people who are interested in a Rotting Room concept and then any sort of horror that takes place in a convent. So this book comes out April 23rd. So if you are interested, make sure to check it out, get a copy from your library or go purchase a copy. This is definitely for people who want a creepy nun story. Now we are moving on to the third and final book in this vlog. That would be Stephen Graham Jones's Mapping the Interior. Now, you may be familiar with this title. I was, at least before this vlog, because it did originally come out in 2017. I will pop the original cover up here, which is a very intriguing cover, and the cover vibe of the old one versus the new one is very different. I actually didn't know, based on this cover, that it was a haunted house book, or I should probably say novella, because this is only based on the edition either 90 or 110 pages, so definitely a shorter one. So this is the old cover, and then the newer cover looks like this. So it's definitely a departure from the old, and I'm really interested to see when I read this, like which cover I feel like kind of captures this book more. So I am pretty interested to read this one. It's been on the TBR for a while, and I'm finally getting around to it. Because this one is only about 100 pages, I'm just going to read the whole thing and then give you a final update or review. Just because it is so short, I feel like breaking it up and intentionally stopping my reading, because if it is 100 pages, I usually do read those books, those novellas, in one sitting. So I don't want to break up the reading experience just to get two different vlog clips in. So I'm going to go read this book, and I will check back in when I'm done with it to give you my final review. So yesterday I did start and finish Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones, and I really enjoyed this one. I really appreciate I've read a couple of novellas from Stephen Graham Jones, and I am always so impressed by the amount of emotional depth he is able to pack into a span of this one. My e-copy said 66 pages, so I was just really impressed with this one. It had some very creepy imagery, but it was also so heartbreaking. What I did think was really interesting about this one, and not even necessarily this book in particular, but When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy actually had this novella in the acknowledgments as a piece of work that helped influence that one. So this one and When the Wolf Comes Home both deal very heavily with a father and child relationship. So in this story, we follow a young boy named Junior, and he wakes up one night in his house and realizes he's been sleepwalking. He's about to go to bed when he sees what he thinks is the ghost of his father, and his father died when he was 4 years old. Junior is 12 at the start of this novella, and he becomes increasingly convinced that his father is haunting his house. So he lives there with his mother and his little brother and is trying to figure out why his father has come back so many years later, if his father is haunting the house, and what his intentions are. So this one is equal parts like sentimental and sad. There were quotes towards the end about being a father and trying your best, and even from a child's perspective, realizing that maybe we put parental figures on pedestals even when they don't necessarily deserve them. This had some great conversations about that, and it was just so well paced. I was flipping pages so fast, and I really enjoyed what this book had to say. It's definitely a very interesting haunted house story. There are some creepy scenes, some scary scenes, and then the end is just going to take your breath away and take a moment. It's an ending where I read it and I was really shocked that that's where it went. Another win for Stephen Graham Jones. I think this book actually makes him my most read author of this year, and I've really enjoyed all of them. Now, as for the cover, honestly, the original one, I'm gonna pop it up here. The original one, I understand why this was the cover, and I like the elements. At first blush, I think you miss some of the details in here, and then when you examine it and you start to see a little bit more, I will say the typography, the font, and then just the color, like that off-white, that is not a color that I know that I initially gravitate towards. So I understand that I like the little details in this one, but I do understand the new cover. I think it very much clearly says this is a haunted house story. It does have other aspects as well, exploring a haunted house, but I think this one is a lot more straightforward. Not that it matters, but I think it also matches a lot of Stephen Graham Jones's other books. Especially, there is another collection coming out later on this summer that is 2 novellas, and I'm really excited about that one because I forget the exact title right now, but The Babysitter Lives, I think it's something like that. That one used to be an audio exclusive, so now it's getting the print treatment, and it looks like visually the same as this one. So for cohesiveness sake, and the fact that you kind of understand what kind of story you're getting into more with this one, I do like it. I kind of want to go with a wishy-washy answer and say I kind of wish they would have taken elements of both of these, because I like on the original how we have that figure and then there's like another figure inside, whereas this one doesn't have really any people. It's focusing on the house, but I think overall, I think this one, just in terms of publishing trends at the moment, is more eye-catching. I am wondering if this is just a re-release and if there was anything added or not, so I might see if I can hunt down a copy of the original and see if anything's been changed. I don't think it has. That hasn't been stated that there has been like any new information, that it's just a republish, but it would be interesting to see because again, the page counts are different when I'm looking on Storygraph between these 2 versions. So I did enjoy this one. It was another great novella. Stephen Graham Jones has a distinctive writing style, so if you're on the fence, I would suggest going in with a novella first, and then that's really going to have you craving more. This book re-releases April 29th, so if you are interested in getting your hands on a Stephen Graham Jones novella, and then if you've read anything from his before, or if you're new, I feel like this is an accessible starting point. I also think it's really cool that this is being republished, and that is giving it the chance to be put in the hands of more readers, because I know, just me personally, I was having a hard time getting my hands on this book until this re-release. So that is going to be it for this vlog. I had really great time reading these April releases. I think my least favorite probably is going to be The Rotting Room by Viggy Parr Hampton. I will say, if you love anything having to do with horror in like a convent nun setting, nun horror, I did find the concept of The Rotting Room really interesting. And then I think Mapping the Interior would have to go next by Stephen Graham Jones. This has been the year of this author for me, and I really enjoyed this one. And then my favorite of the three would have to be When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I just really love what he is doing in the horror genre. I love that every single book I pick up of his just has such emotional depth and weight, and is very chilling and scary as well. So overall, I had a really great time with this vlog. I will be doing one for May as well, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that or any other videos from me. Thank you for watching. Be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!